Hi, welcome. We're so happy you're here. We're so happy to be here. We are the Regeneration Roadshow troupe, and we're so excited to share with you our heart and our minds. Before we get started, I just wanted to ground us with a poem. And this poem is my attempt to translate just one word from my native language, which is Denebazad, into English. And my name is Lyla June, and I'm from the Dene Nation of the Nanishtejitachitni clan. We're also incorrectly known as Navajo. We are indigenous to what is now called New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. But we call it Denebakea, the people's land. And we're starting this roadshow off by honoring Indigenous peoples who exist the world over, and indeed are every single one of our roots if you go back far enough, because these societies mastered the science of regeneration. It is dawn. The sun is rising in the sky, and my grandmother and I are singing our prayers to the horizon. This morning, my grandmother is teaching me the meaning of Honjon. Although there's no direct translation from Denebazad, the Navajo language, into English, every living being knows what Honjon means. For Honjon is every drop of rain. It's every leaf on every tree. It's your every eyelash. It's every feather on the bluebird's wing. Honjon is undeniable beauty. And my grandmother knows this well, for she speaks a language that grew out of the desert floors, like red sandstone arms reaching into the sky and praising creation for all of its brilliance. Honjon is remembering that we are a part of the earth's brilliance. Humanity is an expression of the earth's brilliance. And my grandmother knows this well, for she speaks the same language as snowstorms. She speaks the same language as horse hooves galloping, because she was a midwife and she would race to the women in labor until she became fluent in the language of suffering mothers, fluent in the language of joyful mothers, fluent in the language of handing a glowing newborn to its creator. Honjon is like this. It is an experience, but it is not something you can experience on your own. The eagles tell us this as they lock talons in the stratosphere and fall to the earth as one during courting season. And my grandmother knows this well, for she speaks the same language as the male rain, which shoots lightning boys through the sky and pummels the green corn children and huddles the horses against the cliff sides against the early afternoon. She also speaks the language of the female rain, which sends the scent of dust and sage into our hogans, into our homes, and casts rainbows in the sky. Us Dene, we know what Honjon means. And each and every one of you here, you know what Honjon means. And I believe that deep down inside, we know what Honjon does not mean. Like the days we live in fear, like the days we live for money, like the days when I lived for fame, or like the days when the conquistadors came, when they climbed off their horses and told us they were going to take away the mountains. Now we knew this was not Honjon because we knew you could not own a mountain, but we knew we could make it Honjon once again. So we took their silver swords and we took their silver coins and we melted them with fire and buffalo hide bellows and recast them into beautiful turquoise and silver jewelry pieces and placed it around their wrists, around their necks as necklaces. We made jewelry. Honjon is like this, my grandmother says. It is the healing of our broken bones. It is the healing of our broken hearts. It is the prayer that carried my people through genocide and disease. It is the prayer that will carry us through anything, through this global warming, through this global fear that dances, thin as illusion, in our minds. This morning, my grandmother is teaching me something very important. She is teaching me that sometimes the easiest and most elegant way to defeat an army of hatred is to simply stand before it and sing to it. Sing to it your most beautiful songs until it falls to its knees and surrenders. It will do this, she says, because it will have finally found a sweeter fire than greed, a sweeter fire than revenge. It will have found heaven. It will have found Honjon. And so, my grandmother is talking to the colors of the sky at dawn, and she is saying, Honjon Nahaslin, Honjon Nahaslin, Honjon Nahaslin, Honjon Nahaslin, which means beauty and joy are restored again. It is dawn, my friends. Let's wake up, for the night is over. Thank you. I like to share that poem just to give people a little snapshot of the desert homeland I come from and the value system of my people, which is all about interconnection, kinship, and being a relative to the earth. I'm going to pass it over to Chad in a little bit, but before I do, I want to talk a little bit about the core values of regeneration as I see them. So regeneration is this crazy idea that human beings can leave a place better than they found it. It goes beyond mere sustainability. It goes towards us being a keystone species once again. And I say once again because my PhD research has really, really looked deeply, perhaps obsessively so, at all the different case studies in what we now call North America, although we call it Turtle Island, wherein humans created prolific, beautiful food supplies for themselves and other life forms through regenerative land management. And I studied these systems again and again and again. I measured them, how old they were, how long they were, what types of materials they were made out of, what kind of strategies people used to either augment chestnut groves from Maine down to Georgia, to augment clam habitat in the Pacific Northwest, to periodically and patchily burn the Great Plains so the bison would have more nutrient-dense grasslands to munch on, to the ways in which we would plant our cornfields at the base of watersheds so our fields would constantly be rejuvenated with both water and fertilizer every time it rained. All of these brilliant practices that I looked and combed over. And then one day I realized, by merely studying the outward appearance of these systems, I was actually missing the entire point. Because the secret sauce of regeneration is not what we do, but why we do it. And what do I mean by that? Well, take these ancient clam gardens in the Pacific Northwest that are 6,000 years old and hand those to a capitalist whose primary goal, for example, is to maximize profits for short-term gain for himself or herself and basically enrich their stakeholders and their personal family. That clam garden might not last 6,000 years, right? It's the same exact technology, same intertidal rock wall system. But it's not just what it's made of, but why the people step to the shore. So I started to look at what lies beneath the physical. I started to look into the invisible world of the human heart. And I realized that before we go out there and landscape the world, we must first garden our hearts. We must first take out the weeds of profit maximization, fear of not having enough, fear of not being enough, domination, hierarchy, and instead plant things like reverence for the earth, respect for the earth, reciprocity, restraint, humility, responsibility, regeneration. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit, But my point is, our technology will not save us if we do not address the value system that drives society. Until we garden that, until we engineer that, until we correct that moral compass to point us in the right direction, our technologies will continue to be fueled by the other value system of profit maximization, self-gain, self-profit. And so I'm so excited to talk about this today, regeneration, not only as a strategy, but as a way of life, a way of seeing the world and our role within it. And I deeply believe that humanity, just like I said in my poem, is an expression of the earth's beauty. And I deeply believe that not only does the earth tolerate us, she needs us. Because in all of these case studies that I looked at, humanity acted as a keystone species. And a keystone species is one upon which entire ecosystems depend. And I saw how whenever they killed off the native people, the whole system went into disrepair. The whole system fell out of balance. And it made me think about the Yoruba word for human being, which is chosen one. Not chosen to dominate the earth, but chosen by Creator to be stewards of the earth. And it made me realize that it's not just okay for humans to be here, but that we need to be here when we are guided by regenerative philosophy. And that human beings were given these big brains and these opposable thumbs because we have a unique contribution to make to these ecosystems that no other animal can make. Just like the beaver can do things that humans can't do, or the bumblebee can do things that we can't do. There are certain things that humans can do that no other species can do. And so it is time for us to take up the mantle of our humanhood and not just be like, oh, I'm human, I'm a pest, I'm a virus on the earth, sorry, but to say, I am human, I belong here, and I am needed here. Our Mother Earth needs us. She needs us to be the warriors we were created to be. The warriors who fight for her, the warriors who protect her, and the warriors who think about serving things outside of ourselves first and foremost. And when we make that switch, we become a regenerative culture. So I've talked a little bit about the why. Now, my dear friend Chad is going to talk a little bit about the how. He's done some incredible work over the years to see different ways in which we can take this paradigm and put it into action. And so I want to hand it over to him to speak a little bit about the solutions that he sees for regeneration to change the world.
Solutions. Real technologies, practices, behavior changes that exist today that can not only stop and begin to reverse global warming, not only help us to achieve our sustainability goals, but create a foundation for a regenerative future. In short, solutions that allow us to become a planet-positive species, a keystone species again. But what is a planet-positive species? It's one that contributes more than it benefits from the well-being of this one living planet. Now, we believe that all species are inherently planet-positive because we are all born from the same system of solutions to the harsh physical realities of this universe, a system of solutions called life. We have all here today because of an unfathomable number of innovations over billions of years to bring you and you and you and everyone here, as well as every other species on this planet, with one common purpose: to ensure that all life thrives in abundance. I think we can agree that our species has deviated somewhat from this course. Not all of us, not all of our peoples, but the systems that we have created in order to help us survive, to find some joy and well-being in this harsh physical existence, over these last centuries in particular, have been so extractive, so exploitative, that we're degrading the very natural systems that all life requires. So how do we course correct? How do we become again a planet positive species? It's about shifting the systems themselves, the institutions within which we operate. We are born into systems through no fault of our own, into systems predicated on endless growth, predicated on exploitation and extraction of our natural and human resources. But if we shift that paradigm and create a new system, a regenerative future, regenerative economy, regenerative society that moves away from that endless linear growth paradigm to a regrowth paradigm, predicated not on exploitation and extraction, but upon abundance and well-being for all life. We have tried to do this. The best framework that we've come up with is a concept called sustainability, the ability to sustain the systems we're in within our planetary boundaries, the ability to sustain life. But if we want to have justice, equity, and inclusion at the center of our systems, if we want to ensure that all life thrives in abundance, I think we can agree that sustainability as a framework simply is not sustainable. But regeneration is sustainable. And we know what the strategies and solutions are. We have many technologies, we know what to do. When we start to see the interconnection of all our activities as a species, everything we produce, everything we consume, is part of a system of systems, all interrelated and connected. And we have solutions across all of those sectors that create abundance and allow our species to thrive in connection to nature if we change the systems themselves. And that today the decisions we make matter most because we have the opportunity to create the best case scenarios for our species and every other species on this planet, or the worst case scenarios. And never before has the difference between these two futures, types of futures, has been so wide. The decisions we make today matter more than any other in our human history. And we can choose sustainability, which is perhaps the best of the worst case scenarios. But we have to put the marker on the horizon, to the future we actually want, a regenerative future, the best of the best case scenarios. If we don't put that marker as a goal, we will never get there. So our first step must be to name what we actually want for our species. And it's not only a 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target. It's not simply achieving our sustainable development goals, simply reducing hunger or eliminating hunger. How about, or poverty? How about maximizing livelihoods, providing abundant, nutrient-rich diets for everybody? It's not just about gender equality, but gender equity. It's not just about universal access to education, but universal quality and access of education. We have to move and shift that system to the best of the best case scenarios. But system change feels overwhelming. It's a burden we all feel as individuals, whether we are in our homes or whether we're in our businesses. If we're CEOs or CEOs are on a board of directors, in the finance industry, or of course as policymakers, we feel that overwhelming burden of systems change. And we are feeling the urgency of the greatest crisis, the greatest challenge humanity has ever created: climate change. It is a facet of a larger polycrisis, which we know about. Crises of hunger, poverty, food security, gender inequality, education, refugee, etc. But climate change exacerbates everything. And it's hurtling towards us as we're already feeling today the impact of our changing climate. And climate change demands that we change everything that we do. Because everything we do, again, as a human species, produces greenhouse gases. Every sector produces, everything we consume and produce is also emitting greenhouse gases. So this crisis demands that we change everything. And so I want you to consider that while coming at a terrible cost, that indigenous peoples and local communities, marginalized populations, the most populations experiencing most inequality and inequity in the world, are experiencing yesterday, today, and will experience more tomorrow. We will all experience this terrible effect of climate change. I want you to consider this as potentially the greatest opportunity humanity has ever had to design the future we actually want, because we have to change everything. So if we have to change everything, we can change it for the future that benefits all life. Everything we do as a species produces emissions. From the lights, from the coal and gas-fired plants when we turn on our lights, to the long-dead phytoplankton burned from our internal combustion engines as we move from point A to point B, to the pollution coming out of factories as we producing all of the stuff that we consume every day and throw in the trash, to what we consume and how we consume it. Everything we do produces greenhouse gases. At the same time, we have natural systems that pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and store it safely in plant biomass and soil organic carbon, a process called sequestration in our marine and terrestrial ecosystems. But the problem is there's only a limited capacity in these ecosystems to store carbon, and they're being degraded at an alarming rate, which is causing emissions. So while we have natural solutions, it's not doing enough. This is the cause of global warming and the cause of climate change. So we have to turn off the sources of those emissions and maximize ecosystems' capacity to sequester carbon. This is the only way that we can stop and begin to reverse global warming, which is the only way we'll achieve a 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target in the future. But how do we do that? There's essentially only three mechanisms: to reduce consumption through technological efficiencies and behavior change, to replace those technologies and practices and behaviors that are contributing to the problem with alternatives that are part of the solution, and to restore our ecosystems to their maximum capacity. It's these mechanisms, only these mechanisms, and when taken together, can achieve drawdown, which is a prerequisite to solving the climate crisis. Now, I led a team of researchers and scientists for over 8 years, 100 researchers from all over the world. We mapped, measured, modeled all the technologies and practices that we knew have existed today over a 30-year period to determine what is possible using the best available science and data at our disposal. It was the most substantial study on climate solutions of the last 20 years. And what we determined is that there are many solutions that are available to us across all those areas of human activity, from food systems to health and education. Our energy systems, our built environment, transportation, etc. Won't go too much in detail here, but the point here is there are many solutions available to us. There's a plethora of technology and practices that we can adopt today that have a direct physical impact on our environment and our planet. So we can achieve our 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target, even though we've already met that benchmark today. Every model that we evaluate for achieving 1.5 degrees target is based on 2100. We already predicted overshoot past 1.5. We already know that we needed a drawdown and to begin global cooling. It's still possible to achieve this with technologies and practices that exist today. When we take this as a system of solutions, we see that it is achievable, but we have to do them all. We can't choose one or two or three solutions. We need all technology and practices as a system of solutions And this and only this allows us to achieve our goals. And you may be asking yourself, well, how much is this all going to cost to implement all of these solutions that allow us to solve this great crisis that we're in? Well, it does come at a cost. About $30 trillion more over a 30-year period than we would have to spend anyway on economic growth. But there's a return on that investment of $80 to $110 trillion just in operational savings for a system of solutions that directly stops global warming and has a cascade of benefits. Because we've also mapped all of these solutions to achieving our SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which again is the best of the worst case scenarios. But we can achieve our SDGs when we implement a system of solutions together. The cascade of benefits, because these are the same technologies and practices when done right, that allow us to help solve other challenges in the polycrisis. The key is partnerships, collaborations, working together in order to achieve these solutions in contexts where they matter. These are not global solutions. All of these solutions are local applications. It's about finding the right system of solutions at scale and bringing together the collaborations to make them happen and implement them the right way. But again, we have to go beyond sustainability to regeneration. And that happens when we start to redefine our goals to the regenerative development goals, a post-2030 agenda, setting that marker on the horizon of the future that we actually want. And we can't achieve this when we start to see how these solutions interconnect across all of the areas of human activity. And we start to map the cascade of benefits that happen across all these sectors. This is not theoretical. This is based on science and data. We know that when we do this, we can stop global warming. We know that we can achieve our Sustainable Development Goals, and we can create a regenerative future. It is possible to do this. It is not outside the imagination, but what it does require is us to reimagine the systems that we're operating in, to reimagine how we use land, to ensure that it is regenerative in nature, that we're restoring our natural resources, restoring biodiversity. We have to reimagine our ocean systems. We have regenerative oceans, regenerative food systems. We have regenerative production systems, to move away from an economy of production that's predicated on death, burning long-dead fossilized phytoplankton. It's a necrotic economy, and move away from that to an economy of life, a bio-based economy of production. Our built environment can be designed to be regenerative. Our transportation systems can be regenerative. Our energy systems, and of course, our human systems. When we reimagine the future, we see that there are countless opportunities to create the future we want by design when we reimagine those systems to be regenerative. And as I said, now is a time that we must make these decisions because we are one generation. We're no longer generation X, Y, Z, alpha, because the decisions we make today affect us today, our children tomorrow, and every future generation to come. We must reimagine our systems as an intergenerational generation, the regeneration coming together on our collective journey to a regenerative future.
All right. How are we doing? So, in an alternate timeline, Chad gave the full hour-long version of that keynote, and everyone was deeply informed and inspired, as you are now, but to a higher degree. And yet, for today, he wanted to flip the script a little bit, to move beyond the tired standard of another white guy lecturing us for an hour on how to solve the world's problems. That's right, he knew I was going to say that. I know a few shades. All right, it's not about that. So he invited the rest of us here to make it a little bit more dynamic, to share our different backgrounds and experiences, because just as genetic diversity promotes healthy and resilient biomes, memetic diversity of our information and stories promotes healthy and resilient social systems. And to that end, I'm not an expert in this space. I'm here as a kind of translator, because it's clear we won't have time for planning later. My question is, How much do we want to wager on the reach and speed of bureaucrats debating signing papers? At this rate, it'd be faster to ride a glacier. And I say that in jest, but I'll be crying later when I dwell on all the ways we fail to honor nature and ourselves in turn. To burn a forest is to slide a razor through the veins of not a human, but humanity itself. It's species-level suicidal behavior. And unless we course correct to learn collective self-respect, I fear we won't survive the danger of climate change. We've never faced a greater threat. Yet all that we produce and consume inflates the debt of greenhouse gases we release. We feel them raise the temp, and the tempest will unleash will leave us weeping with regret. Unless we take collective action, make a pledge to finally change our ways and keep climate change in check, to benefit the planet and all of its inhabitants. And yes, it will be tough, but it can be done. So join the quest to become a planet-positive species, finding a sustainable way to maintain these lives that we lead. And even with net zero, that future's not attainable. Sustainability isn't actually sustainable. So let's reframe the goal as regeneration, giving more than we take to restore homeostasis. The question of how is so complex it makes my brain hurt. Thankfully, the experts are working on the frameworks where the first step to planet positivity is actually believing regeneration is a possibility. Our stories about the world inform the way we act in it. So let's adapt our narratives into catalysts that can power this holistic perspective of interlinked systems. Literally everything's connected. Energy, biology, agriculture, politics, education, healthcare, justice, the lot of it, everything depends on everything else. So disconnected actions can't really help. Like, we can shift to EVs, but if the grid's still burning gas, it's like selling carbon credits on a forest already turned to ash. And did you know that that can actually happen, right? So let's say you're like gonna go fly halfway across the world for a climate conference, perhaps, and you like check that little box and pay your like €5 to allegedly offset your carbon, right? Carbon credits. And some of those credits are actually tied to like forests that have already burned down or maybe never existed or just will burn down in the future. So it's like the subprime mortgages of climate action. Not all of them, but definitely happens. And why does this happen? Money. Moloch is up there making us do it, all right? So money is the issue. And it's because we are all individuals at the whim of these incentives. So we are individuals controlling corporations and governments. And I see this in myself. I hear Lyla June, I hear Chad's talk, I hear people speak, and I am legitimately so inspired. I'm like, we gotta save the Amazon. And then I get home and I'm like, I gotta save on Amazon. I mean, have you seen the economy? It's like, what do we do here? And I see this is not from lack of intention. I know I care, but also that delta between intention and action, it hurts to feel it. It sometimes leads to this crippling despair and anxiety. Like, how are we ever going to do this? And yet, then I get back out into the world and I see all of these people who do care, and a lot of them are able to transmute that care into action. And I am deeply inspired by that. And so that helps shift the script in my own mind. And that allows all of us, I think, to create this chain reaction where, no, it's not going to be easy, but it's definitely possible. And I'm just going to take a sip of water because I'm a human and, you know. All right. It is possible. And it comes down to 3 key solutions, right? Number 1, change behavior to reduce our consuming. And then we need improvements in efficiency when making and delivering only those things we need. Number 2, replace the tech that's fueling the fire. Burning fossils got us far, but it's their time to retire. We're on the cusp of nuclear fusion, yet still using power sources from the Industrial Revolution. Number 3, we must sequester carbon through natural and engineered approaches from air capture to forests. It's costly and complex, yes, but a fundamental part of the quest to address the stuff that started the threat. And despite the high initial investment, it's nothing next to what we're gonna pay if this issue's neglected. And when we add those savings to the ongoing gains of a circular system, it's the obvious way to move forward, where we all wanna go on this planet that we're all calling home. And some of us have had a head start, so those privileges need to be distributed, from the biggest cities to the smallest of villages. And this is just the start of the movement. and we need to keep it going till it reaches every human. The experts are crafting the solutions. It's up to the rest of us to use them and choose leaders who infuse them into the social codes that govern us, legal, algorithmic, and cultural, which means we're all potential leaders who are culpable. And here we stand, blazing paths to a future that's regenerative. And I thought maybe there'd be like this epic rhyme that could just tie it all together, and we'd be like, yeah, let's do it. But like, it's a storytelling, right? This is just a talk. How far is this really going to go? There's no rhyme that ties it all together. There's no talk or paradigm that ties it all together. We are all individuals in a larger system, and we'll play our roles. It's got to start with the self and the heart mind, where we commit to making that change every day, right? So let's try to keep that in mind and lead with that hope and trust that we can do it. So given that we are here at the World Economic Forum, let's hear about the economics from Anna and Marc. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Anna. This is Marc.
We're going to have a nice little conversation with you now that we just got the show rocked out of us by Michael. I want to do an experiment with you all. I'd like you to close your eyes for a few seconds and envision your home. Close your eyes and envision your home. Think about what it looks like and what feelings it evokes in you. And when you have that vision, open your eyes, please. How many of you saw this as your home? Raise your hand. Just a few. Don't be alarmed. That's okay. We ask this question quite a bit, and everybody forgets. This is our only home. That's because we all decorate our homes differently. We're all unique individuals. We use different things. We think about our food, our cats, our dogs, our furniture. Maybe if we live in a house, a farm, countryside, our families. And that's okay. But it's not okay when we do it at the cost of other human beings and at the cost of our planet and our environment.
Quick question. How many of you work actively with climate in your day-to-day work or your day-to-day studies? Okay, fantastic. How many of you have heard of Regeneration before you came here? Amazing. And how many has learned something new over the course of this little time we've had together? Oh, fantastic. That's beautiful. Thank you. We're here at Davos, and obviously a lot of the conversations around it, aside from AI and Trump's inauguration, really focuses on money. So we figured we wanted to start just setting the stage. All these incredible things, Lyla talking about the history of what we were and where we need to go, Chad outlining the systems and sort of how we need to reshift and rejigger. And then this beautiful recap. We also don't have rhymes to tie it all together, but we're going to try to move us forward. We wanted to make sure that we're not just saying, oh, well, there's no money. Oh, there's no enthusiasm. So none of this can work. So Marc, you showed me some incredible numbers that really blew my mind away. I would love for us to start with that and just anchor the audience. Are there resources to do some of these things that Chad talked about?
Absolutely. As both Chad and Michael said, everything is tied to regeneration, right? Regenerative economies, regenerative agriculture, regenerative health, regenerative medicine, regenerative business models. So absolutely it's tied to that. You know, we really come down to the question, what does a world that works for everyone look like for you? And regeneration is the key. That's why I'm so excited that we're able to have this discussion. But, you know, let's put it into perspective.
I want numbers, real numbers.
The big numbers. Just in regenerative development alone, not all of regenerative, just the development aspect, since we're talking about sustainable development, Paris Agreement, things, the built and lived environment. How much money do you think is available? Not that we have to beg for, that's already there in regenerative development. What if I told you it was 280 plus trillion US dollars?
That's a lot. Okay, I'm content. I'm a recovering world banker, so I know that we always need to have perspectives, relative numbers. GDP is obviously a horrible number or a horrible measure to bring up after this sort of nice review of how it's been damaging us. But for the sake of simplicity, this is a number we all understand. What does that look like in terms of a GDP of a country? I'm from Sweden. Let's pick Sweden.
GDP of Sweden, 600 billion.
Okay, so tiny, so not maybe
Kind of
Kind
small.
we're really not. We're quite mighty though, even though that number felt a bit small. I've lived in the US for the last 12 years. How about we go straight to the top? What does the US GDP look like?
It's 27 trillion.
Okay, so we're talking 10 times the US GDP will be spent in the upcoming 25 years. And this is money that's on the table that we can all leverage to implement a lot of these solutions that Chad talked about. Okay, that's encouraging. I like it.
You want me to put that into even more perspective?
Go for it.
Okay, so in everything that Chad said, everything that Michael said, everything that Lyla said, regeneration is a whole different model. It's how life on Earth started. Well over 3.8 billion years ago, life is a regenerative process. We're regenerative beings. Every day we regenerate our bodies, our cells. We have the potential in a year to replace our entire cells and our liver and all sorts of good things in a regenerative process. So what if we apply that to our business models, our country models, our societal models, every model that's out there? It's one that doesn't need to be insured against. It's one that you don't have to say, I have to buy an insurance policy so that in case a fire, a flood, or damage comes, I can then replace everything that's been lost. Regeneration is an active model that requires everybody to restore, regenerate their business, their company, their health, their earth, so that we have an abundant, flourishing model. That's why the number's so big.
And this sounds very different from current models, right? This is not what we're operating over then. I think we have a slide. This is too much details, but this is probably what most of you have been operating on and what most of us are familiar with. The fantastic news here, though, is that there are over 32
different. But you've seen some of these old models that don't work, right? Well, we wait until they get a big bubble and then they burst or they get bailed out. And then what? We go right back to that same model? Well, there's hope because there's more than 32 ecological economic models. And the difference, and that's why one was in red and one was in green, I know all of you know at least 5 of these models: circular economy, sustainable development goals, well-being economy, donut economics. There's so many to choose from and more coming, but the difference between the two is the old classical economic models, they compete against each other. These models, you can pick one or all of them, and they're almost redundant. They work well together, and they support and give each other strength to have a better future. So there's a plethora to choose from, or you can operate under them all.
And to be honest, I'm an economist, and none of this I was taught in school. This is something I had to learn for the last 20 years, trying to kind of reinvent the models we were taught. I think to be practical and think about, most of you are working in some shape or form in sustainability or in climate. Let's be concrete. Chad has beautifully defined what we're going towards and the systems that are on the table. Can we talk about what a regenerative business look like? Because the previous slide was sort of what everyone's operating under and what we don't really need. Following slide is, okay, there are options, there are alternatives. What defines a regenerative business?
So the definition's been given many, many times here today, but I want to redefine it one more time. Regeneration or regenerative means to create the conditions that are conducive for life to thrive and flourish amid ever-changing life conditions. That's a form of resiliency. That's a form of sustainability embedded. And when we have that in our business models, then the conditions are always conducive for life to thrive and flourish. We're living beings, and we work in companies. And so when we use linear thinking, siloed thinking, or reductionism of how we do our work, then that can never be regenerative or long-term sustaining. So there's banking that can be regenerative. Can you believe that? It's that they divest their monies from fossil fuels, from bad models that do not leave the earth better than they found it. And there's companies like Patagonia that are trying to leave the earth better than they find it. They said their only stakeholder is the earth. Their only shareholder and board is Mother Nature.
What about consulting firms? Many of us in Davos do consulting work. Can a consulting firm be regenerative? What would that look like?
Consulting firm can be regenerative. A marketing firm can be regenerative. When you consult people, you think about environmental, social governance, you think about sustainability, and that higher standard of where we're going in the world to make sure that those conditions that are conducive to life, to thrive and flourish, are always there. And it sounds like something woo-woo, but it's really not. It's a better model of abundance. And I want to tell you what that model's like. In all living systems, and regeneration is a living system, it's creating the conditions that are conducive for life to thrive and flourish, and we're living systems. Biology, ecology, and environment, 1 + 1 never ever equals 2. It's a super exponential, it's super abundant. So when we apply that into our models, we're not looking for the gap in financing. We're not trying to get another loan, because that model is creating abundance and really tackling the bottom line.
That's beautiful. That's hopeful. So I think I'm a very practical person. That leads me to the how, and what's the role that we all have in this room. To move us closer to the end, let's take a minute and talk about regenerative leadership.
I need to ask you, what is regenerative leadership for you?
I think that regenerative leadership starts with an intention. And I think actually, Lyla, June, you said it so beautifully in the beginning. It's about the why, where the heart is pointing you. So for me, a regenerative leader can show up in all kinds of spaces, all kinds of organizations, nonprofits, businesses, in parenting. And I think it starts with this awakening of the crisis we're in, the notion that maybe climate change is the biggest catalyst, the biggest opportunity we have to actually turn things around. If I think about it, I have 3 children. They're drinking water full of plastic. They're playing with toys that are breaking. The clothes are disintegrating in front of our eyes. When we wash them, it spreads poison in water, which we all need to live. That's not the future I want. It's not the future I want to live in. It's not the future they want. It's probably not the future you all want either. And I think that notion extends to people well beyond Davos. And the ones in Davos that haven't quite figured it out yet, we can all tell them, right? We can remind them. So I think there's an awakening. I also think that there needs to be purpose. I support a lot of entrepreneurs, climate tech, ecopreneurs, nature tech companies. And if the direction of travel is to solve a market opportunity they see today, that's not quite enough. I think we need to look at not solving yesterday's problems. If you're a regenerative leader, you need to build a puzzle of the future through a business or consulting work or by teaching your children the wonder of nature. We spend summers in Maine, we lobster as a family. We only take the lobsters we need, and every time we've had lobsters, we go down together, me and the children, to the shore, and we give back the shells because we know it regenerates the nutrition in the water, and we sing songs, and we say thank you, and my 4-year-old does her little dance, and it might sound a little hippie, but for a child, it's a super important lesson. So I think everyone can be a regenerative leader wherever you are in your life, by demonstrating, connecting to nature.
Do you think that regeneration is just a new buzzword that's been hijacked?
My first job in climate was 2007. It was called clean tech for a while, then it was called climate tech. These things always go in cycles, right? Right now it's popular to talk about regeneration or regenerative, regen ag. You see the big ag companies that have created monocultures around the world saying that they do regen ag. It is a bit painful, but it doesn't bother me too much. I think it's fine. I think we invite them to the table. There's a wonderful organic regenerative farm in Maine that recently redefined their definition of what regenerative is. And the biggest lesson from that process was, don't make it exclusive. Don't make it like something special that only some people can adhere to. Create a funnel so everyone can join. So this is our invitation to you all. This is not an exclusive thing that only some people can do. This is all of us, and we all have a role to play.
We're definitely the keystone species, and we are part of that regenerative process. And only when we regenerate together with all other species and the planet will we go far. Because we are not in the business of business, we're in the business of life.
So again, regeneration is the simple idea of not just sustainability, where we give back as much as we take, but going beyond that, where we give more than we take. Imagine going to a friend's house and they feed you. Don't just simply wash your own dish. See how you could give back to your friend. Bring a loaf of bread. Wash all the dishes. And I think that's our true calling as a species, is to be a species that instead of maximizing profits, maximizes our gifts to the world while still caring for ourselves. We remember this in our hearts. We remember it in our souls. It's where we all come from, and we can go there again.
The work ahead will not be easy. Nothing is guaranteed. But to trust and truly feel within ourselves that it's possible, that is everything. Regeneration means crafting new narratives, breaking harmful cycles, redistributing power. For the world systems to evolve, we must evolve, reframing discomfort into discovery, and finding new ways to feel and think and behave and lead and nurture, and to start today and restart every day.
And it's really about courage. The courage within each one of us to dismantle what doesn't work. And maybe I would say to listen to your belly. Go inwards and think, is this job serving me, and is this job serving the world? Or is it taking more than I can give? Is this relationship lifting me up and lifting others up? Or is it a destructive and degenerative relationship? So we need to question these things and start looking for people or communities or solutions that bring joy, that bring light, that bring positivity.
In this room alone, there is enough people and actions that we can take to transition to that regenerative future, to apply the actions and solutions that Chad spoke about. But we're all here on this earth from that regenerative process. And I know we can all create those conditions that are conducive to life.
So as we leave here today, let us leave with clarity. Regeneration is not asking us to think bigger, but rather to understand more deeply about our world and ourselves, to see the interconnections of climate, biodiversity, our economy, equity, ourselves, our relationships to each other. So let us step boldly, knowing that together, when we link arms and have the knowledge of what we can achieve together, we have the inspiration to set that goal on the horizon to what the future we actually want. And we do so as community. We can come together and collaborate in true collaboration, knowing that that is the pathway forward. We don't have time to wait. So now is the time to act.
All right. To close, just going to sing a little closing song. Thank you, Chad. And, you know, I may be Native American, but that's different than being American. And I just want to do I'm sorry for what America has done and who was inaugurated today. I just want to say sorry. But I guarantee you, just this morning, I was with a whole group of Americans who vowed to fight every day for the next 4 years and beyond to stand up for the rights of Mother Earth, for people, for all the beings that this lost force wishes to subdue. And so I hope you remember that the song I'm about to sing is the true voice of America. It's the original people of that land. And it speaks about not only my Indigenous ancestors, but all of our Indigenous ancestors and all of the Indigenous regenerative roots that we come from. Because just because it was in the past doesn't mean it was more primitive or less advanced. I would say maybe we're the most primitive our species has ever been right now. And those regenerative roots are full of sophisticated sciences, solutions, and beauty that we must all tap into right now and bring forward, and to step boldly, as Chad said, to counter all these forces that are lost, and to love even the people who are lost, and to love them into remembrance of who they are. Our generation's been given a mighty task, but I know you all came here for a reason to take it on. So here we go. Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal, yeah, yeah. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people, oh yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I could feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I could hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's our time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pulling back and let go, I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope, have hope. With compassion as our shield and faith down to our marrow, we will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah. Resurrect, yes you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their own lives when they can't take the dread anymore. No, we can't take the dread anymore. Or no, we won't take the dread anymore, 'cause we can't stand the dread anymore. Yes, it's a war, but we've seen it all before, and now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. Yes, we are the ones that Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I could feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I could hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántense, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más, porque ahorita es nuestro tiempo. This next verse is in Spanish to honor all the indigenous peoples who live south of the imaginary Mexican border in what we now call the United States, because even though Spanish isn't their indigenous language, a lot of our native peoples to the south speak this, so it's speaking to them. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada y traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura, hombre indígena. Tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive. A pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable, yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres, guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más. We are warriors of love, we are warriors of peace, and we will not hide ourselves anymore. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's our time. Yay. Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you so much. We appreciate you having us here. Thank you for your time.